Welcome back to a new episode of the Rectified podcast. Today, as you can see, I don't have a guest with me and I'm doing my very first solo episode for a reason. I decided not to gatekeep anymore and to share with you the 3R framework, which is the exact framework I use with every single one of my clients to help them scale their brand and position themselves as the go-to leaders in their category. This is going to be a masterclass, so grab your notebooks and don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on whichever platform you're tuning in from. It's been more than 20 years that I work with product brands, and one thing I learned is that every single one of the brands you follow and admire are not doing anything magical. Almost all of their strategies fall under one of the R's of the 3R framework. Once you get this, you won't be able to unsee it. The 3R framework has 3 pillars: Revamp, Reshape, Reach. Think of it as a diagnostic tool that you can use to create a roadmap for your brand and understand where you are and where you dream to be. Each R represents a pillar. If one of them is weak, the others will struggle. The first R is Revamp. This is your brand psyche. The first thing we work on is the 4 V's: your values, your vision, your visuals, and your brand voice. We're not talking here about your brand logo, we're not talking about the color palette, and we're not talking about your fonts. We're talking about your brand personality, who you are, and how do you want to represent your brand. One more thing you have to do in this phase is to understand your ideal audience or your ideal customer. No, I'm not talking about their age or gender or where do they live. While all of that is important, what's even more important is to understand their lifestyle, what language do they speak, where do they hang out, and where you can actually find them. When you define your brand psyche, everything else gets easier. You'll be able to create better content, write better copy for your website, your email, and your ads, and you will be able to speak to your ideal customer in their own language. Not everybody has the 4 V's wrong, and not everybody ignores their audience, but sometimes people tend to focus on the wrong thing, which is why a tool like this helps you identify the gaps and work accordingly. I once spent hours trying to convince a founder that her product was not the problem. She came to me and she wanted to reformulate, change the packaging, change the design, but that was not actually her main issue. When we looked into it, we noticed that her product was really good. People were actually buying it, but her main issue was her messaging. If you go on her website, if you check out her social media or her packaging, the main issue was that there was a different message on every single one of the touch points that she has with her clients. After hours of negotiation, she agreed that we shouldn't touch the product and we should work on her messaging, and that changed everything. It's almost never the product. Most of the time, it's your messaging. It's how your brand communicates their why and talks to their ideal audience. Here are some signs that will help you identify this. People can't describe what your brand stands for in one sentence. Your content looks like everyone else's in your category. You attract followers, but they don't feel connected, low engagement, low loyalty, they're not converting. You keep changing your messaging because nothing feels quite right, and you've rebranded visually, but it didn't move the needle. If any of that sounds familiar, this is where you start. Now, here's what's interesting. A lot of brands have actually decent branding. They don't really need to work on their revamp, but they're still stuck, which takes us to the second R. The second R is Reshape, and this is your growth strategy. There are 3 questions that you need to be able to answer: where you are now, where do you want to go, and do you have the right infrastructure to actually get there? Most product brands skip this entirely. They actually go from branding to execution. They start posting content, they start running ads, they launch new product categories, but what they don't have is an actual strategy that can compound over time. That's why they're busy all the time, but not actually moving forward. Let's take, for example, a skincare brand that was doing somewhere between 500 to 800K in revenue. They were busy all the time. They had everything right. They had a great product, great packaging, great branding. They were posting all the time on Instagram, on TikTok, launching new products, and also negotiating a retail deal. I was wondering why they came to me, but then I realized that their revenue and sales had plateaued for the past 18 months. When I looked into it, I realized what the problem was. They were doing different tactics, but there was no strategy connecting everything together. Basically, they were posting content, they were doing ads, but every single activity was separate from the other, and they didn't all go towards one business goal. They were being reactive and not strategic. The retail push is splitting their focus from D2C, where the margins are higher. They didn't know where they're going in the next 6 months, and they weren't able to identify which activities are actually driving the results because everything is working simultaneously. This is typical of most small businesses. You want to do everything simultaneously, but you don't have the infrastructure to support it. The fix isn't in doing more. It's about picking one growth channel and going all in on it. Once we reshaped this strategy, they were able to hit 1.8 million in revenue in just a few months. Suddenly, the same amount of work was giving more results because it was all connected. How do you know if Reshape is your weak R? You're busy every day, but revenue has flatlined. You don't have a clear 6 to 12 month growth roadmap. You're constantly reacting instead of executing a plan. Your team or you feel scattered, too many priorities, nothing compounding. You've tried all the strategies, but nothing sticks because there's no through line. If you're exhausted but not growing, it's almost always a Reshape problem. Now let's move to what you love to talk about and what you start with before having defined who you are and where you want to go. That's the third R, reach. Reach is all about your audience. Are you attracting the right people consistently? I'm not talking about followers, I'm talking about your buyers. This is where you need to pay extra attention to your content strategy and to your messaging. Here's the thing most brands get wrong. They jump to reach first. They start posting content on social media, they hire social media managers, and they put money on ads. What they don't understand is that if they have the first R and the second R wrong, they would be putting money down the drain. When you have the first two R's figured out, you will be able to communicate with your ideal audience in a better way. Content creation will no longer be something difficult that you have to do. You'll just create content with ease and reach your ideal audience. I once worked with a specialty food brand. They make small batch hot sauces and gourmet spices, and their product is incredible. They started in farmers market and they gained a lot of following. They had their branding, which was amazing. Their packaging was great. Their brand identity is great. Their strategy was also locked in. However, they were having issues with their content. They weren't able to reach as many people as they desire. Once I looked into it, I realized that they have a founder with an amazing personality, and we decided to put the founder in the forefront. Slowly but surely, their audience grew. They now have a community of highly engaged fans, and their sales grew with their social media growth. How do you know if reach is your weak R? You're posting consistently but not growing. You get compliments on your product from everyone who finds it, but not enough people are finding it. Your conversion rate is actually good, you just don't have enough traffic or eyeballs. You're getting attention, but it's the wrong audience. Lots of engagement, no sales. Your competitors with worse products are outperforming you because they're simply more visible. If your product is great and people love it once they find it, but they're not finding you, this is the R you need to work on. Now here's the thing. Every brand has one R that's weaker than the others, and that's the one you need to be working on. Not all three at once, not the one that's easier for you, and not the one that your competitors are working on. Your weakest R. When you fix the right R first, everything else starts to click. Your branding makes your strategy easier to execute. Your strategy makes content creation more intentional, and your content starts to reach the right people because it's backed by a clear identity and a clear plan. Now you're probably wondering, all this is nice, but what should I do? Well, the first step is to define where you fall within this equation, which is why I created the free 3R brand diagnostic, which is a tool that only takes you 10 minutes and helps you identify your weakest R. The link is in the description of this episode, and if you gave it a try, let me know your results in the comments, and I'll see you next week with a new episode.